Okay, I'm pretty sure we're live.
I think so too.
So, okay. Welcome back. Mr. Murphy and I are here.
Nice
Um,
to be back.
we're doing a podcast because a student who he knows who he is, but I won't name, asked for a podcast. Eventually we'll do more of the life skills stuff, but
Yeah, well, we have to get back to that.
um, it's been a long week. It's been a long semester. It's been a long day.
It's been a long time since we sat down and done
It's
this.
been a long time as well, so we'll just have a nice chill conversation.
Sounds good.
Just before this, so we were talking about family.
Yes.
One day, hopefully, I will have a family myself, but considering like it's good to consider these are things I want, but when I get them, how will I feel, right? Because like the way my life is set up right now, honestly, on like a long day at work, it's kind of nice to some extent to go home and just like chill.
Yes.
But I do consider like, okay, like you must come home and your kids are already there, I would
Oh,
assume,
yeah.
right? And I'm assuming they're pretty stoked to see you.
Very.
So my biggest question with like family stuff is like, how do you feel like, and I don't know how much you want to get into details about like your family, but the things
Oh,
you've
I'll talk
shared with
about it.
me, so, I mean, like your own family. It's gonna be a short podcast. um, yeah, sure. If we get one question, how would you say your family connections impact your health, both like mental, emotional, psychological, and then like actual physical health?
Oh, that's a good question. I you know, there are days when like sometimes I'll go home and if my kids aren't there for some reason, like maybe they're out at a birthday party or whatever, and I come home and the house is quiet, and then I realize how, like in this just how in the routine I have always coming home and like seeing like my kids and wife and family and like honestly how much I love it and rely on it. I almost don't realize it because sometimes I do feel too like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have the extra time, just to kind of be able to, do the things you kind
Yeah.
of want to do and come home and just have it kind of be quiet. But I don't know, it's just such like a and maybe it's just because I'm so much in the thick of it right now, because you're right. Like, I come home and all the kids want is to just play. And they're so pumped when you get home. It's like honestly the best part of my day because you walk in the door and they're like, oh, you're home. And then all they want to do is just play and they're like all over you. And it can be like a lot
Hmm.
especially after like a kind of tiring day. But I don't know I also feel like what I get out of it is like so much more, like I do have to be so purposeful about walking in the door and like getting myself in a space where you're like also excited to see everybody, because after like a really long tiring day it's easy to kind of come in and be like short, whereas like what I really want is to be come in
Or a
and give
little
them
like low.
yes, or like
Some
just feel
stuff.
like you had
Some
such a big
student,
day.
I was walking out of the classroom. Some student goes, "Mr. Kawaja, don't look so miserable." Like, all
Oh
right. And fair question. Like,
yeah,
I was aware, like my internal state. I was definitely feeling lower energy.
yeah,
I'm not feeling 100% right now either.
yeah,
Tiring day. We had a pretty intense like reviewing an exam and me realizing like, oh, there's a lot of garbage questions on this exam. So it's like, oh,
right,
I'm thinking all the work to do.
yeah,
That's on
yeah,
my mind, and people can read that expression on your face. So
yeah,
even coming home and you're dealing with little kids, like and your children,
yes.
and they see mom or dad, like, oh, they look sad.
Yes. Oh, and they're the best at
Mm.
picking up on it.
Yeah.
Like, there are days when, like you say, you're thinking about all those things, or I'm thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, and they can tell that you're sort of like
Distracted.
checked out or distracted or whatever. And I don't want them to think about that. Like, they shouldn't have to be thinking about, the fact that I'm not totally there. So I have to, like, yeah, be really intentional about I've had to just become really intentional about my time and, like how present you are. Like being present, being mindful. I don't know. It's not something I'm naturally very good at. So I have to really, because I'm always just keeping myself busy. So I find like, yeah, just being really intentional about coming home, being really present, giving them like 100%, which is hard. It's almost impossible to do that all the time, but rem- constantly reminding myself to do that. And same with my wife, like, making time, like as soon as you get the kids down, it's easy to just like crash on the couch and you're like on your phone and, but we've had to also be like, no, we gotta make time and be intentional about that part of it too.
It I feel like it dramatically changes how a relationship works if you actually spend that like 60, 80, 120 minutes where like there's no devices, you're just
Oh yeah.
dealing with one another, right?
Yeah.
There's no TV on that you're kind of, you know, vegging out to,
Yes.
and it's really helpful because you just pick up on the person's presence and whatnot, and right,
Yes.
like
It takes
kids are
time.
very aware of if you're checked in and out, but so are you as an adult,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like you're very aware, but you have to be present, right?
Yes.
So you mentioned earlier, like you walk in through the door, it's been a tiring, long day. Like so today's gonna be one of those days. You get home probably at
Exactly.
7:38.
Yeah.
Um, do you often feel like you get energized by your kids?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Because they're so high energy that you
Yeah.
kind of can't help but get like pulled into it. Yes, I do
Hmm.
get energized from them. But then you kind of like, at some point, you crash a little bit. And then oftentimes that is after you get them to bed because you got this crazy rush. And, we have a bit of a routine where like we'll play and we'll go downstairs and roughhouse and whatever. And then we'll have supper and you get them ready for bed. And then sometimes it often is after that that like you end up crashing.
Yeah.
But that's then my time, you know, with my wife. So like, you have to somebody kind of said like your home life should like energize you for work and your work life should energize. Was it you who told me this?
No,
Somebody very
no.
wise told me this.
There's no way I would say something
Oh,
like that. Yeah,
anyways, I
I
was
don't
reading
know.
it or somebody said your home life, like your home life should sort of energize your work life and your work life should energize kind of your home life. Like that's kind of this balance that you should strive for. And I think about that sometimes because yeah, like it's easy to just crash and like you say, veg out in front of the TV. Whereas like I know that's not what I really want to be doing. And so I want my wife to get like and my kids to get the best part of me. Whereas I'm more of a morning person. So like I'm always high energy in the morning at school because and my students get that, which is great. But then I want my kids to get and my wife to get that part of me too, and not just get like the tired me when you walk in
Mhm.
the door. Yeah.
I think like a similar related concept to what you said is like kind of like radical optimism, right? Because some people are very anti-work, like, oh,
Right.
I hate work. Like work is something I have to do
Right.
that pays my bills and pays for me to do my hobbies. And I'll be honest, like I've been in a bad mental space about that as well
Hmm.
recently. Um, but it if you do the opposite, like radical optimism, like, hey, I feel good at work, like
Mm.
it's gonna be a good day, right? I'm gonna be energized by
Yes.
what goes on. Sometimes it's hard for me to do that because it's like being realistic as well, of like what's actually happening in front of you and not being in denial about it or like lying
Right.
to yourself can be hard, but choosing what you want to focus on also makes a big difference. But yeah, it's kind of like radical optimism. It's like, hey, you're gonna have a good day at work and you're gonna have a good day at the house,
Yes.
right? And if you're focused on that, you're more likely to achieve it than if you're like, God, if I go home today, my wife might chew me out about something I did or didn't do. Um,
Yeah, and if that's what you're thinking about, like when you find that, like when you're telling yourself that, and do you find that carries over to when you get home and then you have like enjoy your time at home more?
well, I find like being in a low state means I'm more likely to do things I don't want to do. So like,
Yeah.
because lately I'll go home and it's like, the reason why I'm asking about family is like, because like what I do when I go home is like, I'll lay in bed and I'll like open up YouTube. And it's
Yeah.
like, wow, 4 hours have passed by. It's like 8 o'clock, right? Or
Yes.
9 o'clock, whatever, right?
Yes.
You kids do it too.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I
Exactly.
don't scroll on TikTok or whatever, but a device will just pull me in to its like with its demonic pull,
Yeah.
almost seemingly. And hours will pass by and it's like,
Oh yeah.
do I feel good? No.
Yeah.
Right? Do I feel energized? Not really. Have I done the things I need to do?
Yeah.
So like, and things have, like, my health has improved a lot, and mental health as well is kind of still in a weird space, if I'm being
Mm-hmm.
honest. But like the other day, had like a little good chat with one of my friends that I live with, and starting to like get out of that zombified state of just being sucked into like something that's requiring all your attention, right? Like a
Yeah.
device or a show,
Mm-hmm.
to doing things that are meaningful to me, right? Like, okay, like
Yes.
I like yesterday I went and cooked some fresh food, like
Yes.
some meat, right? Which I
Yeah.
had at lunch today as well. And
Yeah.
but like had a fresh cooked meal, and it's like in that moment it's like, oh man, like I gotta like prep this, prep that, I gotta grab all this stuff and do all this, but
Right.
it's like, hey, like this is a good thing,
Yes.
right? So um yeah, kind of coming back to that, like, for many people, many staff members, they go home and they have family life to deal with. And are you always like miserable and resenting, like, oh, I gotta get to work, I gotta deal with these idiot kids, and then go home and like, oh, I'll have no time for me, like my kids are gonna be there, and right, and that pulls you into a low state. And it's
Yeah.
kind of
It
interesting because
can.
you mentioned like your children are high energy,
Oh
like
yeah.
if you're in tune to it, like they'll pull you out of whatever state you're in,
Yeah.
and they'll pull you into theirs. Now if
Yeah.
theirs is an elevated higher state, great.
Yeah.
When they go low, like you got to be an adult,
Because that's the
right?
thing is like, they have their days where like you come home and it's like chaos and they're like at each other's throats and like and you have to and yet somehow not lose it too because like, you have to kind of keeping your calm. That's almost the harder part. Like it's easy to kind of like I find to I mean, I don't even have my phone kind of at all when I get home. I can't. I was talking to some students the other day about it. Like I had to delete Facebook and had to delete, my like YouTube app and whatever. Same thing because it's like it's so easy to just get pulled in. So it's like I just have to
Not
delete it.
have it there.
Yeah, because even just that little bit of resistance is kind of enough. And then you get home and it's easy when they're like excited and everybody's happy and it's more when they start having a tough time that you really have to find your
Hmm.
find your calm and because they
And
pull on that too.
yeah,
They draw
like
on
the
that.
things that you attend to, Jonathan Pajot talks about this. I try to tell my students about it as well. Like, those apps want your attention,
Yes.
and once you get pulled into the world of the app, like you can really tune out. And probably you've experienced this, some of you, with talking to their own parents or friends, and it's like the outside world just becomes non-existent. And
Yeah.
if you're out of tune and not present for a couple moments and you tune back into the present moment, you might respond with the exact opposite of what that moment needs.
Yes.
So,
It's true.
mhm,
Yeah, that is very true because
mhm,
when you're kind of like I mean, we all go there. You all get pulled in
yeah,
and then it is so easy to just be totally checked out. And then you kind of just get in a routine of that. And that's what I find. It's the routine
mhm.
of like even in the evenings, I'm would rather I know that it would be better for me to pick up a book because I've got like 10 books that I want to read.
It'd
But
be
it's
more
just way
calming and
easier. It'd
relaxing.
be more
Yeah,
calming, it'd be relaxing. You're not looking at a screen right before you go to
yeah.
bed. You'd be less likely to like spend an hour at it and you maybe spend 15, but somehow
What?
it's like I just
Mhm.
there's some resistance to like picking up the book as opposed to just like pulling out your phone. I don't
One thing. So there's this guy on YouTube. His channel is called Healthy Gamer GG. It's like some Indian doctor, and he's gotten quite famous, I think, over the last 2 years. But he has this video where he just watched this short, and he was explaining like the thing with reading a book is that if, like, even the book you gave me, so this here book of talents, like for me to go through this entire thing,
Yeah.
probably take me 3 or 4 hours at least,
Yeah.
right? For me to go through it and understand it
Yeah.
might take like 10 years.
Right. Yes.
Um, and he was talking about how, like, okay, well, if the goal is really big and the amount of effort that needs to be put into it is a lot, your brain kind of doesn't want to do that because it's like, well, what is reading one page of the book gonna do?
Yes.
Like, oh, one page out of 200,
Yeah.
that's nothing. I'll just go on my phone instead.
Yeah. Yes.
And it seems like, well, with the phone, there's no objective. And that's kind of like the
Yeah,
gross,
that's
creepy thing
true.
about social media. Like there's no objective, right? And the scroll is forever, right?
Yes.
The endless scroll, I call it. And so it's like, okay, you just get sucked in, right?
Yes.
And it pulls you away. And for me, like kind of coming back to what I wanted to discuss with like, I feel like just scrolling on my devices is really bad for my health. And so I do wonder, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, sure, having, you know, a wife and maybe one or two kids means that I come home and there's a lot of things that require my attention,
Mhm.
right? But there's a lot of things that are feeding back, and it's like, okay, maybe I'd feel a lot better with a more stable relationship and a more
Mhm.
consistent relationship and kind of like a positive family connection and sense of community in the home.
Yeah,
Assuming you have all that, right? Like some people don't have that despite the fact that they have, you know, a spouse and
definitely.
children, but um, you know, and you know, like we're on opposite spectrums of that. Like me
Yeah.
being a bachelor and you having three young kids. It's it must be crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
Because you're also
But
a
but
very
we
busy family too.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, we are pretty big.
Mm.
We try not to like kind of like get ourselves too crazy busy with activities and stuff because you can spend, your whole life running around just activities and we want more of
Then
like
the
the create.
activities run your life, right? Yeah.
Yes, as opposed to like us running it. And so we try pretty hard actually like not just inundate ourselves with activities and, in time it might happen. But I feel like we're actually pretty similar in the way of like, we're thinking about those things
Hmm.
because, I have a lot of everybody's got to do it their own way and there's no judgment. But like there's tons of parents that go home and are on their phone too.
Hmm.
And so like, yeah, like your kids might be pulling at you, but you could just as easily go home and still just be on your phone. So like, I don't know that it's the family that makes that easier so much as it is like the conscious decision that you and I make and kind of the awareness of like, okay, this is maybe pulling me in a direction I don't want to go. Whether you have a family or whether you're a bachelor, I don't know that it really matters. Like
Hmm.
you kind of make that decision
Your
of
value based on your
your value
values.
based decision is like, what do you want it to look like? And then you're going to try and work towards that. And like, it's a constant battle, and it's a
Hmm.
constant battle to like come home and be present with them and then still have the energy at the end of the day to like sit down and, have a meaningful conversation with my wife and connect and like yeah, it's just like it is a constant, you know, effort to make that happen because I don't have nearly as much time for myself. But then I do find that the time I do carve out for myself, I have to just be more efficient and more intentional. And so like, I'll carve out time in the morning before I come to work to like sit down and like I'll exercise in the morning. Usually I'll try, even if it's only for like 2 minutes, because it's like you say, like what's the point of reading one page of a 200-page book? Well, at least you'd get through two books in a year as opposed to right now I'm not getting through any. So
Yeah.
like honestly, one page at least you'd read a book or two a year.
Hmm.
I read some stat the other day that was like of graduates that don't go on to post-secondary, less than half ever read another book.
Graduates who
So
don't.
of
Okay. Okay.
graduates,
So high school
so you
graduate.
graduate grade 12, so all my grade 12s out there, if you're not going to post-secondary, because in post-secondary you're kind of forced to read books and whatever. But of those that don't go to post-secondary,
Uh-huh.
less than half will ever read another book in their lives.
That's a sad statistic.
Isn't it?
That's,
But I believe it actually
yeah.
too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like whether you have kids or don't have kids or a family or not a family, you know what I mean? Like that's true kind of across the board. And it just kind of speaks to
Hmm.
like, well, what do you want to spend your time doing and what's
Hmm.
important to you? And are you do you want to try and kind of develop yourself and
Hmm.
continue on that journey or not?
Yeah. Like, you know, we were discussing just work stuff, and it's interesting because like 3 years into my job, like I get a course that I've taught now. This is the second time, and I have like no real material for it,
Right.
and it's like I feel very lost at sea. And then you know I look back, it's like, man, what the hell have I been doing for 3 years? And it's like, oh, well, I focused on like really trying to understand the skill of writing,
Right.
right, and how to potentially teach that, and all this other stuff with the YouTube and all the stuff
Mhm.
that hasn't yet made it onto the YouTube channel that should one day get there, and learning all these other things, and then like what Jim Rohn says, like focusing on like improving myself rather than like
Right.
oh, like I have a really good test, yippee, right?
Yes.
Like, sure, but you might still get irritated by the same set of problems you're gonna experience, and it feels really weird. But it's like, okay, like, you know, one day at a time, small little piece at a time, and now it's like, okay, now I need to kind of reverse it and maybe focus on the things I need to do at work, or like we discussed earlier, ask myself if this is what I want to be doing 5, 10, 15 years from now. So
Right.
I do like that you brought up like values, right? Like you could come home and not give a damn about your kids and just be on
Sure.
your phone and be absorbed into your own little world, but the small choices you make on a daily basis really shape, I guess, how that relationship exists and
Yes.
comes into existence.
Man, I think that's exactly it. I think it is the small little things. It is the smallest little choices that you make every day.
Hmm.
100%. Those are the ones that
They're
become the
very
big
difficult.
choices. No, it
Very
is.
difficult.
They're the hard ones in the moment.
It's just,
But like that's so true. It is
hmm,
like those are the little things that become the big things
hmm,
because it's every day like okay, you just like grab food on your way home or whatever rather than making like a home cooked meal like you're talking about and you just get in the habit of that every day. And then it's those little things versus like, making yourself a meal that, in the long term like your physical health and your mental well-being and like
everything.
all those things.
When we're talking about food, everything, right?
Yes, it's everything. It affects how you feel and how you act
Hmm.
and then how you can do your job. So like I don't know. I think there's something to be said for like the taking care of yourself first.
Hmm.
Because yeah, you can go develop all this incredible material, but if you're not at your best
Hmm.
to deliver it and to create it, then it's
Hmm.
not really necessarily your best material.
Hmm. Coming back to the health part, because I'm curious about that, and maybe we'll go for a couple more minutes and
Yeah,
head
sure.
over.
Yeah.
But do you think that your health would be worse, like if you didn't have these kind of social bonds with, like, let's say your wife, your kids, and then your extended, like your siblings and
Yeah.
parents and whatnot?
I think it would be worse.
Hmm.
I don't know. I actually think about that sometimes. Because, like I say, when I often think, I was like, oh, if I, had a whole evening to myself, it was just me at home, I'd be so productive. I'd work out and I'd, like make a meal, blah, blah, blah. And I'd like do all these things that I've been meaning to do.
Hmm.
And then once in a while it happens and I come home and I am like the least productive. I sit on the couch, I'm on my phone, I like buy food, I don't exercise. I don't crack a book. I'm on my phone, and then the night's gone. I watch a movie or whatever, and then it's like that was the exact opposite of how I
Yeah.
thought I'd behave. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's so surprising to me. It happens once in a while, and it just opens my eyes to like, wow, I have this vision of like what it'd be like if I had all this time, and that's not what it is. And so it's kind of like you say, like I don't have a lot of just downtime, but the time I do have, it does make me be more purposeful.
Hmm.
I don't know.
That's
I can start.
something.
What was the question? Now I forgot what the question was, but
Well, just like, and those are all
oh, do the
aspects of
bond kind
health,
of like
right?
yeah, yes.
To some extent, but like, so I guess if I want to be really specific and to the point, like sometimes I wonder, like, would I not get as sick? And maybe, man, this might just be unique to this year because of other things that are happening in my life. But
Yes.
it's like, oh, if I had like a stable relationship,
Mm,
and
mm,
potentially some children,
mm,
like, would I get less sick? Is almost what I wonder.
hmm.
It's like, okay, like if I had
Interesting.
like good social bonds, because a lot of that
Yeah.
in my life
No.
crashed over the summer. Like people moved away and
Yeah.
whatnot,
Yeah. You had a lot of changes.
um, and like my friend was just pointing out to me, she's like, no, you've been sick like every 2 months. And I was like, well, I can't even remember that far back. But then when I thought about it, it's like, yeah, like the first 2 months of the school year were just not good for me at all.
No.
And then I kind of got sick around like October, which is like
Yeah.
2 months into school. And then I got sick again around November, December,
Yep.
and then January, February. And it's like, the puzzle pieces are clicking. And I'm like, oh my God, like I've
I
been
mean, you think
getting
it's kind
sick.
of a
Yeah.
result of all the like
Yeah, I
changes
do
in your
wonder.
social connections and
I do
everything.
wonder. Cause like I guess we could contrast like how much time do you spend with friends versus like family,
Yeah, not a lot.
right?
Not in this phase of my life.
Yeah.
Like and that's something that I'm pretty aware of. Like I don't do the best job of,
Hmm.
with my friend group and some of them have kids and kind of get it and some of them don't have kids and don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a little like one page a day advice I found recently. Like I saw on Instagram or something like, hey, when you're in that phase of your life where you can't meet your friends, just send them a card like
Yes.
once every few months, once a year, and like, hey, you'll pick things up 20 years from now. Right?
Yes.
And like my friend who gave me that kind of talking to the other day, like she's same thing. She's going through that now, right? Like all her kids are older.
Right.
She's kind of got some things sorted out in her life and a little bit better off financially. Now she's reaching out to people, right? And
Right.
finding that those same friends that she hung out with 20, 30 years ago, they're reconnecting. So,
That's
um,
cool. That's good advice.
right? Just once a year, right? Send a card or touch base, like, hey, how you doing? Right? Just
Yeah.
checking in.
And it can feel
You know,
awkward because it can feel like, man, I haven't seen you in so long. But I just reconnected with a friend that like from high school. This, we saw him on occasion, but
mhm.
you know, and we sat down and we kind of arranged to go have coffee. This was a couple weeks ago, and I don't usually go and just do coffee dates on a Saturday because it's like, like same old thing. We're busy.
Saturday's a busy day with family,
Yeah,
right?
but I sat down with him and we visited for like 3 hours. It was so nice, honestly, for both of us. It really
Mhm.
was. And so like, yeah, those you kind of just get in that zone and almost forget, but it really is
Well,
nice.
on that note, I just listened to a little bit of a podcast with Chris Williams, and he pointed out a study that said for men's mental health, like they need 2 guy nights a week. And he was kind of talking
Wow.
about the response to that of like
Yes.
people being like, oh, you're a man child, you're this, you're that, just berating men,
Yes.
which is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
it's like, hey, like this is like the bare minimum requirement for good mental health,
Yeah.
right? And with all the talk of like who commits the most mass murders, men. It's like, well, what
Hmm.
is that? It's like a mental health issue, really primarily. Um, just interesting, but yeah, like having because and so coming back to that main question of like, I went from like spending a lot of quality time with some people that I love,
Yes.
and particularly like having dinner with some friends like once every week
Yes.
to just like zero. It's like, oh, it's just work,
Right.
right? And I've journaled a lot about the kind of lack of balance, and it's like I'm really not going to get a lot more satisfaction than I've experienced so far out of work.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the other satisfaction and good kind of quality of life come from? It's like, oh, relationship, friendships,
Yes.
potentially hobbies, right? Or meaningful activities,
Sure.
right? So I guess that's kind of what I'm aiming at. And it's like,
Yeah.
despite maybe not spending as much time with friends, because you still have those meaningful relationships, and, I'm sure you can distinguish the moments where you need to be a parent and where you get to
Yeah.
be a friend with your kids. And it's
Sure.
like,
100%.
I feel like if you can do that, you can spend a lot more moments and hours with your kids as friends rather than like, okay, I need to discipline this little guy,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Or
for
we need to
sure.
sort this problem out. So,
Yes, for sure. I mean, they're my favorite people in the world.
mhm,
Like my wife and kids, like honestly, they're my favorite people in the whole world. Like I feel
mhm,
so blessed to be able to come home to them. And I do think that has a huge impact on my health
mhm.
because, like I mean, like aside from the fact that they bring home germs beyond like all measure from school and stuff and like physically sick, but I mean, like your overall kind of well-being, yeah,
Mhm.
it honestly, I do really believe that it has a huge impact. I never thought about it like that, but yeah, if it were all of a sudden kind of like gone, and all of a sudden changed, I know that would have a huge impact.
Because imagine if every evening's by yourself and every evening
Yes.
looks how it actually is,
Yes.
not how you want it to be, right?
That's
It's
what I
like,
mean.
right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I really put
Mhm.
myself in that position, yeah,
Right.
absolutely, it would look so different for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Hey, no problem. You too. Appreciate it.
All right, kids, go out there, find a good partner, have a family, live a good life.